The casserole dish slipped from my hands and shattered against the kitchen floor. I just stood there, staring at the broken glass and the mess of green bean casserole spreading across the tiles, but I wasn't really seeing it. My mind was stuck on what my granddaughter had just whispered to me from the doorway. "Grandma, I don't want to drink Miss Patty's special juice anymore. It makes me feel weird." My hands were trembling as I grabbed the counter for support. Emma was only 7 years old, and she'd been living with me for the past 8 months while my daughter Rachel underwent chemotherapy treatments 3 hours away in Boston. My son-in-law traveled with Rachel for her treatments, and we all agreed that keeping Emma in her familiar school and neighborhood would be best for her stability during this difficult time. "Sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "come here and tell Grandma what you mean." Emma padded into the kitchen in her pink socks, carefully stepping around the broken dish. She was still wearing her school uniform, her dark hair pulled back in the braids I'd done that morning. She looked so small standing there, clutching the straps of her backpack. "Miss Patty always gives me juice when she watches me," Emma said, her brown eyes looking up at me with that innocent trust that children have. "She says it's special vitamin juice to help me grow strong. But Grandma, it tastes funny. And after I drink it, I get really sleepy and I can't remember things good." My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Patty Morrison had been our neighbor for 3 years. She'd moved into the house next door after her divorce, and she'd always seemed pleasant enough. When I needed someone to watch Emma for a few hours here and there,
and that's
Patty
when
had
I
offered to
realized
help.
this wasn't just
she
a
missed having
story
kids
I needed
around
to
since
tell.
her own children lived
It
across
was a
the country
moment
with
that
their
changed
father.
everything
I'd been
for
so
me.
grateful for the help. Between managing Emma's schedule, driving to Boston to see Rachel on weekends, and dealing with my own grief and worry about my daughter's illness, having a neighbor willing to babysit had seemed like a blessing. Now my stomach churned with a different feeling entirely. "How long has Miss Patty been giving you this special juice, honey?" I asked, kneeling down to Emma's level. Emma scrunched up her face, thinking, Since the leaves started falling? She said it was our secret game. She said I shouldn't tell you because you'd want some too, and there wasn't enough for everyone. The leaves started falling. That was October. It was now late January. 4 months. 4 months of my granddaughter drinking something that made her sleepy and confused, and I'd had no idea. I thought back to all the times I'd picked Emma up from Patty's house, how she'd sometimes seem groggy, how Patty would laugh and say they'd been playing so hard that Emma had worn herself out, how Emma had been sleeping more than usual, how her teacher had mentioned she seemed tired in class sometimes. I'd attributed it all to stress. The poor child was dealing with her mother's cancer diagnosis. Of course she was exhausted, of course she was having trouble focusing, but now a different picture was forming in my mind, and it made me feel physically ill. "Emma, where does Miss Patty keep this special juice?" I asked. "In her refrigerator. It's in a purple bottle. She pours it in a little cup for me." "And you always drink it at her house? She never sends any home with you?" Emma shook her head. "No, she says it has to stay cold or it won't work." I stood up slowly, my knees protesting. At 63, I wasn't as spry as I used to be, but right now I felt ancient. The weight of what I was hearing pressed down on me like a physical force. "Honey, I need you to do something important for Grandma," I said. "I need you to go upstairs and start your homework. I'm going to clean up this mess and then make us some dinner. Can you do that for me?" Emma nodded, but she hesitated at the kitchen door. "Grandma? Am I in trouble for telling you about the juice?" The question broke my heart. "No, sweetheart, you are absolutely not in trouble. You did exactly the right thing by telling me. I'm so proud of you. You should never keep secrets from Grandma, okay? No matter what anyone tells you." Emma gave me a small smile and headed upstairs. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close before I allowed myself to lean against the counter and take a shaky breath. I needed to think. I needed to be smart about this. My first instinct was to march over to Patty's house and demand answers, but something told me that would be a mistake. If Patty was doing something wrong, if she was giving my granddaughter some kind of substance, I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what Emma had been drinking before I made any accusations. I cleaned up the broken casserole dish, my mind racing. Then I picked up my phone and called my friend Barbara. Barbara Thompson and I had been friends for over 40 years. We'd raised our kids together, survived our divorces together, and now we were navigating our golden years together. But more importantly for this situation, Barbara had worked as a pharmacist for 35 years before retiring last spring. If anyone could help me figure out what was in that juice, it was her. "Margaret, what's wrong?" Barbara's voice was concerned. She knew me well enough to hear the tension in my hello. "I need your help," I said, keeping my voice low even though Emma was upstairs. "Something is wrong, Barbara. Something is very wrong." I told her everything Emma had told me. By the time I finished, Barbara was silent for a long moment. "You need to get a sample of whatever's in that bottle," she said finally. "Do you have any way to do that?" I thought about it. Patty's house. The purple bottle in the refrigerator. How could I possibly get access to it without raising suspicion? Then I remembered something. Last month, Patty had asked me to water her plants while she visited her sister in Vermont for a weekend. She'd given me a spare key. I still had that key. "I might have a way," I said slowly. "But Barbara, I feel like I'm going crazy. What if I'm overreacting? What if it really is just some kind of vitamin drink and Emma is just sensitive to it?" "Margaret, listen to me." Barbara's voice was firm. "A child is telling you that an adult is giving her something that makes her feel weird and sleepy, and that adult told her to keep it a secret. That is never okay. Even if it turns out to be nothing, you need to investigate. Trust your instincts." She was right. I knew she was right. After we hung up, I made Emma a simple dinner of chicken nuggets and apple slices. I watched her eat, looking for signs I might have missed before. She seemed like her normal self now, chattering about her day at school, telling me about the art project she was working on. But when I asked her about the last
Welcome
time
back,
she'd
everyone.
had Miss Patty's
Today,
juice,
I want to
she
share a
said it was
story about a
yesterday.
moment that completely changed
Patty
my
had
perspective.
watched Emma for 2 hours while I went to my book club meeting. I remembered picking Emma up and thinking she seemed quiet. Patty had said they'd watched a movie, and Emma had fallen asleep halfway through. I'd carried my sleeping granddaughter home and put her to bed, not thinking anything of it. Now that memory took on a sinister new meaning. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat in my living room in the dark, watching Patty's house through the window. The lights were on. I could see her moving around inside, living her normal life, while I sat here with my world turned upside down. What was she doing? Why was she drugging my granddaughter? The questions circled in my mind like vultures. I made a decision. Tomorrow was Saturday. Patty had mentioned she was going to a craft fair in the next town over. She'd even asked if I wanted to come. But I'd declined because Emma had a playdate scheduled. When Patty left for that craft fair, I was going to use that spare key. The next morning, I watched from my kitchen window as Patty loaded some boxes into her car around 9 o'clock. She waved at me as she backed out of her driveway. I waved back, my smile feeling like a mask stretched too tight across my face. I waited 15 minutes to make sure she was really gone. Then I told Emma I needed to check on something at Miss Patty's house, and I'd be right back. My heart was pounding as I walked across the lawn to Patty's side door. The key was in my pocket, the metal warm from my body heat. I glanced around to make sure none of the other neighbors were watching, then let myself in. The house smelled like lavender and something else, something chemical underneath that I couldn't identify. I moved quickly through the small mudroom and into the kitchen. The refrigerator was an old white model, humming loudly in the quiet house. I opened it and scanned the contents. Milk, eggs, leftover takeout containers, a bowl of fruit salad. And there, on the top shelf, a purple plastic bottle with no label. I grabbed it with trembling hands. The liquid inside was a pale pink color. I unscrewed the cap and sniffed it cautiously. It smelled fruity, like artificial strawberry, with something bitter underneath. I'd brought a small mason jar from home. I poured some of the liquid into it, careful not to take too much, then sealed the jar and put it in my jacket pocket. I replaced the purple bottle exactly where I'd found it and closed the refrigerator. I was about to leave when something caught my eye. A folder on the kitchen counter, partially hidden under a stack of mail. The edge of a photograph was sticking out. I shouldn't look. I should take what I came for and leave. But something pulled me toward that folder. Call it intuition. Call it a grandmother's protective instinct. Whatever it was, I followed it. I pulled the folder out and opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, all of Emma. Emma playing in Patty's backyard, Emma sleeping on Patty's couch, Emma eating snacks at Patty's table. Emma, Emma, Emma. Some of the photos looked like they'd been taken without Emma's knowledge, shot through windows or from angles where Emma wasn't looking at the camera. My blood turned to ice. Underneath the photographs were printouts of what looked like online research, articles about child custody laws, information about how to establish residency in different states. A printed email conversation between Patty and someone with the username Second Chances, Mom about starting over and the perfect opportunity. One message stood out. She's alone so much. The grandmother is overwhelmed. The parents are never around. No one would even notice at first. By the time they did, we'd be long gone. I don't know how long I stood there, reading those words over and over. The room seemed to spin around me. The implications of what I was seeing crashed over me in waves. This woman, this neighbor who I'd trusted with my granddaughter, she wasn't just drugging Emma for some incomprehensible reason. She was planning to take her, to kidnap my granddaughter. My legs gave out. I grabbed the counter to keep from falling, sending the mail scattering across the floor. I didn't care about the mess. I didn't care if Patty knew I'd been here. I just needed to get back to Emma. I grabbed the folder with the photographs and emails. Then I ran. Back in my own house, I locked every door and window. Emma looked up from her coloring book, startled by my frantic movements. "Grandma? What's wrong?" I forced myself to take a breath. I couldn't scare her. Whatever was happening, whatever nightmare I'd stumbled into, I had to protect Emma from the fear as much as from the danger. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. I just remembered we need to keep the doors locked. Grandma's being silly." I called Barbara immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "I need you to come over," I said. "Now. And Barbara, I think we need to call the police." Barbara arrived 20 minutes later. I showed her the sample from the purple bottle, and while she couldn't test it there, she examined it carefully. "This doesn't look like any vitamin supplement I've ever seen," she said grimly. "The consistency is wrong, and that bitter smell you mentioned could be a sedative compound. Margaret, you need to get this tested properly, and you need to do it today." Then I showed her the folder. Barbara's face went pale as she read through the emails. When she looked up at me, her eyes were wet. "That woman was going to steal your granddaughter." Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I started crying then, great heaving sobs that I tried to muffle so Emma wouldn't hear. Barbara held me while I cried.
I never imagined it would be
and
possible,
then she helped me pull myself together.
But looking back now, it all feels
"We're calling
so
the police,"
clear and meant
she said.
to be. I am
"Right
so
now.
grateful.
This is evidence of a planned kidnapping. They need to see this." I nodded. But first, I needed to call my daughter. Rachel answered on the third ring. She was in the middle of a chemotherapy session, and her voice was weak, but when I told her what I'd discovered, she found strength I didn't know she had left. "Mom, you get Emma somewhere safe right now. Don't let her out of your sight. I'm calling David. We're coming home." The police arrived within 30 minutes of my call. I showed them everything. The sample from the purple bottle, which they took as evidence. The folder with the photographs and the emails. I told them everything Emma had said about the special juice and the secret game. Officer Martinez, a woman about my daughter's age, took detailed notes and asked gentle questions. When Emma came downstairs to see what was happening, Officer Martinez got down on her level and spoke to her kindly. "Emma, your grandmother told me about the special juice Miss Patty gave you. Can you tell me more about that?" Emma looked at me, uncertain, and I nodded encouragingly. "She said it would help me be a good girl," Emma said quietly. "She said that after I drank it and took my nap, she'd take me somewhere fun. She said she was planning a special surprise trip, just for me, and I couldn't tell anyone because it would ruin the surprise." The officers exchanged glances that confirmed my worst fears. "When was she going to take you on this surprise trip, honey?" Officer Martinez asked. "Emma thought about it," she said soon. "She said when it got warmer outside. She said we'd go to a place where I could play on the beach every day and I'd never have to go to school again." I felt like I might be sick. Patty had been grooming her. All those months of special juice and secret games, it was all to prepare Emma to go willingly, to trust her, to not fight back or call for help when Patty finally made her move. The police told me they would go to Patty's house to question her. They advised me to stay home with Emma and not answer the door for anyone except law enforcement. I spent the next few hours in a state of suspended terror. I couldn't eat. I could barely breathe. I just held Emma close and watched out the window as police cars came and went from the house next door. Finally, around 4 in the afternoon, Officer Martinez returned. "We've arrested Patricia Morrison," she said. When confronted with the evidence, she tried to run. "We found a packed suitcase in her bedroom with cash, a burner phone, and 2 bus tickets to Florida dated for next month. Next month. She was going to take my granddaughter next month. The substance in the bottle has been sent for testing, but preliminary assessment suggests it's a dissolved sedative, likely diphenhydramine in high doses, enough to make a child drowsy and compliant without being immediately obvious." I thought of all those times I'd picked up a sleepy Emma, all those naps Patty claimed she'd taken, the nights Emma had slept so heavily nothing could wake her. "What happens now?" I asked. "Miss Morrison is being charged with attempted kidnapping, administering a controlled substance to a minor, and child endangerment. Given the evidence, she'll likely be held without bail. You and Emma are safe, Mrs. Holloway. She can't hurt you anymore." Safe. Such a small word for such an enormous feeling. Rachel and David arrived the next morning. Rachel looked thin and pale, her headscarf covering the hair she'd lost to chemotherapy, but she was there. She swept Emma into her arms and didn't let go for a long time. "I'm so sorry," I kept saying. "I should have known. I should have seen it. I let that woman into our lives." "Mom, stop!" Rachel's voice was fierce despite her weakness.
As the sun set on that distant horizon,
you saved her.
I knew my life
you
would
listened
never
when she
be the
told you
same.
something was wrong.
It was a moment of pure,
you trusted your
unadulterated
instincts.
clarity.
If you hadn't, if you dismissed what she said, she couldn't finish the sentence. None of us could. The investigation continued over the following weeks. The police discovered that Patty Morrison had a history they hadn't known about. Years ago, she'd lost custody of her own children in a bitter divorce. Her ex-husband had gotten full custody after Patty was found to have issues with prescription drug abuse and erratic behavior. She'd moved to our quiet town to start over, but her obsession with having a child, with getting back what she'd lost, had festered into something dark. She'd chosen Emma because Emma was vulnerable. A child with an absent mother, a overwhelmed grandmother, a father who was rarely around. In Patty's twisted mind, Emma was a child who needed rescuing. She convinced herself she was saving Emma, giving her a better life. The emails with second chances, Mom, were with another woman she'd met in an online forum for estranged parents. They'd been planning this together, creating new identities, finding a place where they could disappear and start their sick fantasy of a new family. All of this came out in the trial, which happened 6 months later. I had to testify, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I did it for Emma. I sat in that witness stand and told the whole story, from the moment Emma said she didn't want to drink the special juice anymore, to the moment I found that folder in Patty's kitchen. Patty was convicted on all charges. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. I still live in the same house. I thought about moving, about running away from the memories, but this is Emma's home. This is where her friends are, where her school is, where her grandmother is. I wasn't going to let Patty Morrison take that away from us too. Rachel's chemotherapy ended 4 months ago. Her scans have been clear, and though she still has a long road ahead, she's getting stronger every day. She and David moved back to town to be closer to Emma and me. We have dinner together every Sunday, and Emma sleeps over at my house every Friday night. Sometimes, late at night, I still look out my window at the house next door. There's a new family living there now, a young couple with a baby. Normal people living normal lives. They have no idea what happened in that house before they moved in. I never told Emma the full truth of what Patty was planning. She's too young to understand that kind of evil. But I did tell her that Miss Patty was sick and had to go away, and that she would never bother us again. I told her that she was brave for telling me about the juice and that her bravery had protected her. Emma is 9 now. She's in 3rd grade and she loves soccer and drawing and making up stories about dragons. She still has nightmares sometimes, and we've been seeing a child therapist who specializes in trauma. But mostly, she's just a kid. A happy kid with a family who loves her. I learned something important from this experience. I learned that evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it looks like a helpful neighbor with a friendly smile. Sometimes it moves in next door and offers to babysit and says all the right things. Sometimes it's patient and calculating and waits for the perfect moment to strike. But I also learned that love is stronger. A grandmother's love, a mother's love, a child's trust in the adults who care for her. Those things are powerful. Those things can fight off the darkness when you're paying attention. Emma saved herself, really. She told me something was wrong. She trusted me with her fear and her confusion. If she'd stayed silent, if she'd kept Patty's secret, I don't know what would have happened. I can't let myself think about it. So now I tell this story whenever I can. I tell other grandparents, other parents, anyone who will listen. Pay attention to what children tell you. Even when it seems small or silly or impossible, listen to them, believe them. Because sometimes, what sounds like a child complaining about funny-tasting juice is actually a cry for help. And sometimes, picking up that cry can save their life. Last week, Emma and I were baking cookies together, and she looked up at me with flour on her nose and said, "Grandma, I'm really glad I told you about the juice." I pulled her into a hug, this precious child who had been through so much and come out the other side still capable of joy. "I'm really glad you told me too, sweetheart. I'm really glad you told me too." The house next door is quiet tonight. The new neighbor's baby is asleep. The streetlights cast their familiar glow on the familiar street where I've lived for 20 years. But I'm not the same person I was before all this happened. I'm more watchful now, more careful, more aware that danger can come from the most unexpected places. And I'm more grateful for my daughter who is healing, for my granddaughter who is thriving, for the friend who helped me find the truth, for the instinct that told me to dig deeper when something didn't feel right. We almost lost Emma. That thought still wakes me up at night sometimes, the cold reality of how close we came to losing her forever. But we didn't lose her. She's right here, in this house, safe and loved, and growing up exactly as she should be. And that, in the end, is the only thing that matters. Did you like this story? If you did, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one, and leave me a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. I love hearing from all of you. Take care of yourselves and take care of the children in your lives. I'll see you in the next one.